Welcome to John's Well in County Kilkenny. It's a small rural village like many others all over Ireland. There's a pub, a church, a school and a scattering of houses. Despite being born and reared in Kilkenny City, I never thought I'd end up here. And certainly not in this quiet rural place where my husband Peter and I moved 8 years ago. I was living in Dublin at the time in East Wall, and once I was pregnant we decided we wanted to move back to Kilkenny and we wanted to live somewhere in the countryside. I didn't matter where, I just knew somewhere in County Kilkenny. There was no road access at this stage, this was just one big field. And I remember I was quite heavily pregnant at this stage, but we climbed over a wall and we went through a gate and we walked into this space, and instantly both of us knew that this was the right place. And we thought, sure, what have we to lose? Will we build a house? It's still not fully finished. Almost 7.5 years later, it's not fully finished yet, but we're getting there. And we haven't looked back since. I suppose the reason it was so easy to move from Dublin back down to Kilkenny is because both of us work from home. So we're in the lucky position that jobs really weren't an issue. We worked from our house in Dublin and now we both work from our house in Kilkenny. So the only time I ever really have to leave my office, which is the kitchen, is for ear to the ground. I think the worst thing about living in the country is having to drive everywhere. Or it's the thing I found most difficult to get used to, because I was used to living in a town where you could pop out and get a loaf of bread, and then you could come home and pop back out and get a pint of milk. And when the weather is very bad, in December of this year I was snowed out and forced to live with my mother, which obviously was a nice thing for both of us. But we were snowed out for a while and couldn't get home. And then when we finally made it home, we were snowed in and couldn't get back out again. Though I never saw myself as a country person, I suppose it was never that far away in my childhood. My father was very involved in agriculture and, of course, the GAA. I suppose the two things that would define my childhood would be, like most people in Kilkenny, hurling. Daddy would have hurled for Kilkenny in the late 60s. He won 3 All-Irelands for Kilkenny. And farming. So they would have been the two, I suppose, passions in his life. And as a result, they would have been the two things that probably defined our childhood most. I went to school in the presentation in Kilkenny, and then when I did my Leaving Cert, I couldn't wait to get up to Dublin. I had a happy childhood, but I was ready for something different. So I went up to Dublin in 1988, delighted with myself, and studied journalism. I really loved Dublin, and after a few years there, met and married a Dubliner. So we were both very happy to settle down right in the heart of the city. So this is where we bought our first house in Dublin, West Road and East Wall, and we absolutely loved it. We had fantastic neighbours and never thought we'd want to leave, actually. We're doing a thing about, I suppose, the fact that I moved from Dublin to live in the country, and we've come up to the first house that we bought. Oh, good, keep watching it and keep me in a job. Yeah. We had a lot of friends here in Dublin, and they were more than surprised when Peter and I moved to the country. My friend Josephine is happy to visit, but would never give up the buzz of the capital.
It's a commitment. I don't think you uproot from the city and move to the country and fit in overnight and find a rhythm overnight. I think you have to consciously make a decision to make a life for yourself, and you have to reach out to people around you, and you have to choose things to do that involve you in the area. And obviously as a visitor I don't do that, so I'm in and out in 2 or 3 days, which suits me fine. You know, when you move into a new community, no matter where it is in Ireland, they like to place you. So I suppose people knew where I came from. So I never felt excluded in any way. But definitely I didn't feel fully part of John's Well until Katie started school.
Every child here knows every other child. All the teachers know all the parents. We know them all by first name. They know us on a first name basis. All you do is hope that more families move into the area, that you get new families from the surrounding areas, which is what is happening here. A lot of our new families now are a mixture of people who are living in the John's Well area and people who are living in Kilkenny, maybe on the outskirts of the city. It's about so much more than economics. People look at everything this day and age just as a matter of numbers and figures. In many of these rural areas, things such as post offices, shops, pubs, these have all closed, and the only thing holding a lot of communities together now really is the local school. The spirit of a rural community really does depend on the school.
Even now I think you can see a difference between a child who grew up in the country and a child who's growing up in a bigger town or a city. And that's probably one of the reasons why I moved here. Maybe they grew up a little bit slower in the country, so they are younger and a little bit more innocent for a little bit longer.
Of course, I'm not the only blow-in in the parish, but while I just moved from Dublin, my neighbour swapped countries and swapped city living in Holland for life on a dairy farm in Ballyfoyle.
I gave up everything in Holland and came to live here.
Was it John's Well or was it the man that drew you to the place?
Well, of course it was the man, but then when I had a look around here and the country, I fell in love with that as well.
She actually settled in quite quickly at it. I went off one day, had to go away, help a neighbour do a job, and I came back and she had started the milking, and she was only here in the first 3 weeks. She had the milking half done when I came back, so
You said that's a keeper.
I could keep her then, yes.
I never had difficulties moving over. Jim's family welcomed me very well, and the community then as well. They were all warm and welcomed me.
There's no such thing as a blow-in really in John's Well, because you're accepted for what you are. You're not a blow-in. You know, everyone is a blow-in. You have to come from somewhere, so you're made feel very welcome here.
I dreamt that you were in my arms, and then I woke.
The nightlife in John's Well may not be as varied as in Dublin, but it's every bit as entertaining and great fun.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
I would never move back to Dublin, no. I wouldn't move into Kilkenny either. I wouldn't move into Kilkenny City. No, I think I'll stay here. I'll be carried out of here in a box, as they say.